Hi, and welcome to State of Mind with me, Dr. Shyam Bhat. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, you know that there's a lot to talk about from a psychological perspective because each character is a personality. There's so much to explore. But I want to focus on one conversation in this most recent episode between Clegane the Hound and Sansa Stark. And the Hound says, he notes that Sansa Stark has changed so much, and he says, none of this would have happened if you had left King's Landing, if you hadn't left King's Landing without me. No Littlefinger, no Ramsay, none of that. And Sansa Stark pauses and she says, without Littlefinger, Ramsay, and all of that, I would have still been Little Bird. Now that's a great line because to me as a psychiatrist, that really underlines the phenomenon of something that we call post-traumatic growth. The idea that trauma and difficulties and suffering can transform us and help us grow instead of what we often think about these days, which is post-traumatic stress, where trauma actually ends up hurting us and making us weak. The idea that suffering can make us grow and make us stronger is definitely not a new idea. It's actually at the bedrock of many spiritual traditions and many religions. But, psychiatry and psychology has been studying this for the last many decades, although I feel, unfortunately, a lot of what we talk about and a lot of attention that we pay today is on post-traumatic stress. And the fact is that while we must treat post-traumatic stress disorder clearly, and it is a really difficult problem for many people who unfortunately go through life-threatening situations, the fact is that more people, when they go through trauma, more people experience post-traumatic growth versus post-traumatic stress disorder. And that is, I think, a very optimistic and empowering idea for us, that as human beings, we are so resilient that even when we go through difficult times, that experience and that suffering makes us wiser, stronger, and results in a greater appreciation for life. Because that's what happens in post-traumatic growth, that when people go through suffering like Sansa Stark, they discover that they are stronger than they ever imagined. They discover more appreciation for life, more gratitude. They become more empathic towards other people and more kind to other people because they realize that life does have some difficulties. And just as I have faced difficulties, maybe you have too, and so I can open my heart to you as a fellow human being on this voyage of life. It can give us much more appreciation about the limits of our own patience and endurance. You never know how strong you really are until you've been tested, actually, to be honest. And it's only through moderate stress and through falling down and picking ourselves up that we feel empowered, that we can actually face and defeat challenges in our life. So what are some of the key characteristics that can help us during times of suffering to ensure that we are more likely to grow from it rather than get traumatized by it? Well, firstly, I want to say this is not a question of strength or weakness, and that going through life-threatening situations, for almost all human beings will provoke many deep emotional reactions, and to suffer because of that does not imply that we are weak. Having said that, there are certain qualities that if we cultivate, we can actually respond better to suffering. And there are three key qualities that research has proven. Firstly, openness. Openness to experience and openness to imperfections in our life. So the more open you are when difficulties happen, the more able you are to accept that it has happened, and the more open you are to the idea that you have to change in response to this difficult event. And in asking yourself this question, how must I change, rather than feeling, helpless or hopeless or angry about the life event, you say, how can I change? How must I change? When we are open to that idea, then we can really open ourselves to growth. The second thing is extroversion. And by this, I don't necessarily mean you have to be extroverted, but research shows that reaching out to others during times of suffering, during times of distress, getting that support is a key element in recovering from it and in actually growing from it. The third and final quality, which I think is really central, is cultivating the ability to accept that which you cannot control. Often I feel like we oscillate between two polarities. I've seen people either trying very hard to control outcomes and then giving up and saying, I can't control it, so I'm just going to let go completely. But the answer, like so many things in life, is somewhere in between. It's that balance of keep doing what you need to do, let go of that which you can't control. As the famous Serenity Prayer says, Lord, give me the courage to change the things that I must and can change, the patience to accept the things that I cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I hope we can practice some of these, and just like Sansa Stark, when we go through difficult times in our life, I hope we can look back and say it was because of those times that I am now a stronger, wiser person. Thank you for listening to State of Mind, and I'll be back very soon with the next episode.